question, how did we get the Bible, is one that certainly must have come up on the mind of a Christian. Probably even not a Christian, probably someone who has heard about the Bible. And so the lecture, How Did We Get the Bible, was when I was excited to attend. And this was because the speaker was a New Testament scholar, Dr. Michael Kruger. And so disclaimer is that it talked about how did we get the New Testament Bible, not the entire Bible itself. And it spoke about this through seven major misconceptions. And I'm going to run through those misconceptions and its rebuttal to those misconceptions that we have about the New Testament Bible. So the first one is that the early Christians here mean the Christians who lived within the time of Jesus's life and death, um, the first century, let's say, didn't think there would be a written Bible, and so they stuck to the oral tradition of passing down Jesus's story. And his rebuttal to this was that God gave Israel a written document. The law came through Moses, but we know that God actually inscribed this law on stones. And so the idea of a covenant coming and being written down is something that would have filled the minds of these early Christians. And so they knew that the Old Testament came through a written document. And that means that the New Testament as well, with Jesus' death, should come through a written document. And so writing was very early, it was natural, and it was organic. And so it wasn't like oral traditions that someone now decided, okay, it's time to write it. No, the writing has started. The second misconception is that the authors of the New Testament didn't think they were writing scripture, and so the authority was given to it later. And so whether it was Paul writing the letters, whether it was Mark, John, Luke, they just thought, oh, we're just writing something. And then some persons in say like the Roman Empire, the Constantine, or the Byzantine Empire now decided, oh, this sounds great. Let's make this very important, and so everybody should obey. His rebuttal was like, that's not it. The authors knew the office they were writing in, and so an example was Peter in 2 Peter 3 states that some distort Paul's letter like they did other scriptures, and so yes, equating Paul's letter to scripture, to something that's inspired. And so whether it's Paul, whether it's Peter, all of us knew the office, the authority they had, and they were writing in that authority. The third one was that the early Christians disagree widely about which book should be in the New Testament. His rebuttal to this is that the books in the New Testament were established early on, and so way early in first, second century, that so there were already 22 of the 27 books. This had all of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all of Paul's letter, or most of Paul's letters. The ones that were in there were another five books. And so there was the very short books like Second John, Third John, Second Peter, Jude. I can't remember the fifth one. That one I missed. But these were the very short books, and these were the ones that didn't get added on until quite later on. The fourth misconception is that there was no New Testament canon till the fourth to fifth century. Um, and so the rebuttal to this was that the list of the 27 books was first written down, at least based on historical evidence, by a man called Athanasius in 367 AD. And so this is definitely fourth century. And so because that was the first evidence, historical evidence of the least of the 27 books that is in the New Testament. There's that assumption that this was the first time that this was the start of the canon. So it was probably 22. It was probably another number, but the speaker's rebuttal to that is that it's an assumption that because it was first the first historical documents to document it was in 367 doesn't mean it was the first time those 27 books have been recognized as the canon. The fifth one is that the apocryphal books are just as valid as the New Testament books, and He rebutted this that with the statement that the New Testament books were written in the first century. Again, this is during the generation Jesus lived and died in, but the apocryphal books were written second century, much later after. And these are not just the apocryphal books that some of us might be conversant with, like the Maccabees. This is like the Gospel of Thomas. And he had very interesting examples to give from those books, so like Jesus um, standing up and being 60 foot tall, his head touching the clouds. And those apocryphal books, many of them were written, and some were just different people writing for different reasons, just trying to fill in the gaps. Or Jesus was moving and his cross was moving with him and the cross was speaking. Some were just for fun, some were just thinking about filling the gaps in the Bible, of which again um, they were written much later. The sixth one is that the apocryphal books were, these apocryphal books I was talking about, were widely read and very popular. And the rebuttal to that is that the canonical Gospels, which is the 27 books that we have, were cited by other writings, historians in thousands. And so it's like you write a scientific paper and you just get lots of citation. Why? Because it's different people from around the world have agreed that this is reproducible. This is a seminal work. But the apocryphal books were actually just cited a few times in tens, not in thousands, probably 10, 15, 20 times. And so it means that they were actually not widely read, because if they were widely read, they would be cited in other people's work. And also another one was that the manuscript copies of the New Testament far outweighs the Apocrypha. And so the copies of the New Testament that were made, because it was important and there wasn't printing, it's better to write different copies of it. So it's a lot of them, a lot for the New Testament Gospels, but for the Apocryphal Gospels, there were just very few copies that were made. And lastly, um, this one's probably the one that probably everyone probably thinks about, or we actually think, is that the New Testament books were actually picked by the church at some point, whether it's the Council of Nicaea or one council, or the church decided, okay, what books are we going to put in the New Testament, and which ones are we going to take out? Let's put this one, let's take out this one, let's leave the letter of Paul, let's take out the letter of who knows. But his report out to that was that the church recognized this book as the ones that had the voice of Jesus, and this happened very early on. And so whether it's the book of Luke, Matthew, um, Thessalonians, which are Paul's letters by John, Jude, and Peter, all of this all had the voice of Jesus, and because all of these apostles all spoke, all wrote in their office, so the church actually recognized them, and it was not like recognized them at a point, but it was something that was recognized very early on. And so again, this video and this is just to point to the fact that the New Testament, um, it's actually very robust, and it's a book that we can trust, that is divinely inspired and historically confirmed as well. And so we can go about knowing that the New Testament Bible we actually do carry um, is one that's been divinely inspired. And so let no one talk you out of the fact that, oh no, this is someone's handiwork. No, it's actually God's message to you.